Well, I finally have the Cadillac Escalade frame in the shop, and I'm happy about that because we got snow last night. In this episode, what I'm going to try to do is get this 6-liter LQ9 engine running with a standalone Chinese harness. If you watched my last episode, I used that same harness on this 5.3 and it fired right up. Worked really well. Originally, I ordered the harness for this 6-liter engine, so it's got the correct connectors for the fuel injectors and everything. But it won't work with the throttle body on here. I realized after I ordered it, this is an 02, not an 03. And Cadillac switched over 1 year early to the drive-by-wire. And so the PCM and everything that it uses is the PCM that's normally used for a drive-by-cable vehicle, not drive-by-wire. And I suspect there's some other components on this engine as well that are somewhat unique. This is a little bit of an oddball engine, and there's not a readily available harness that works for it that you can get cheaply. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to move some of the components, like the throttle body on this engine, over to the 6-liter, and I'm possibly going to have to move some other stuff over, along with the PCM and the throttle control module and the accelerator pedal, and I'm hoping this thing will fire up. If it does, I'll need to reprogram the PCM so it's got the correct parameters for the 6-liter, which is a higher compression engine. Timing probably will be a little bit different and things like that. But it should fire up with the 5.3 tune, and if I can get it to fire up in the 5.3, I'll know that I'll be able to make it work, and I can proceed that way. If not, what I'm going to have to do is order a drive-by-cable harness and switch over the throttle body to drive-by-cable and reflash the PCM on this vehicle so it's fully drive-by-cable, and that should work. So anyway, this will determine the route I need to go. So I'll get started here and we'll see what happens. I've got the engine cover off and the intake tube off of there, and got more access to stuff. And as I mentioned before, here's one of the big differences between that 5.3 and this 6-liter engine. On the top, I've got the throttle body from the 5.3, and as you can see, it's got one wiring plug on the side and nothing on this side. And down below it, still attached to the engine, is the throttle body for the 6-liter. And it's got the one plug on that side, and you can see there's a different servo motor and everything like that on there. And it's got another plug on this side. So it's completely different as far as a wiring perspective goes. So I'm going to swap this throttle body onto there. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to clean up that mouse nest in there too. Pretty nasty stuff. Get that cleaned out. I think I'll take the belt off and alternator out of there. When I fire this thing up, I want the belt turning anyway and pumping antifreeze and power steering fluid all over the place. So I'll take that out, and if I get that alternator off, it gives me more access and I can clean this up a little bit better. Well, I got the mouse nest all cleaned up and the old wiring harness removed. I got it off in one piece, which is nice because someone else might be able to use that. Got the 05 drive-by-wire throttle body installed. It bolted right on, no problems, but the only issue is this vent coming off the valve cover for crankcase ventilation. It doesn't have a port to go into. The old throttle body had a port on there. On the 5.3, the port is right there going into the intake manifold, and then that routes through this throttle body to the front side of the throttle plate. Now that hole or port is there, but it's just not drilled out, so I'll have to drill that out and put a little fitting in there to get this to work. Either that, or I'll have to switch out the whole intake manifold for the 5.3 intake manifold. But anyway, I think I can make that work. The new harness is on, everything hooked up. except for the O2 sensors. It's a different connector on the O2 sensors than what I have here. So what I'll probably wind up doing is putting new O2 sensors on with the right connector. The only other thing that was a problem with the harness is the speed sensor. It's meant for a two-wheel drive, and it's supposed to plug in back there. Speed sensor in the four-wheel drive is in the transfer case. Wire isn't quite long enough, so I'll have to extend those wires for that. I think I'm all ready to start it up here. Got a very simple setup. Here's my ignition and my fuel pump wire. They're going to get put right on there. That's 12 volts hot. I'm going to do that with the vice grip. And this is my start wire down there. Touch that to hot, and it should crank over. And if all things work, it should fire up. I'll just have to put the camera down for a second to hook up the fuel pump, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I've got my fancy on-off switch hooked up, and you can hear the fuel pump running. We'll give this a shot. Well, it's running, but it's running rough, rich, because of no O2 sensors, I believe. Anyway, it works, so I'll count that as a success.